This is number 9 on page 254 in your 6th edition. It's just a simple write a program to mimic a calculator. The program should take an input of 2 integers and the operation that it performs. So you're going to basically prompt for the 2 integers with it, prompt for the operation it performs, and then output the numbers and the operator and the results with it. So simple, read it in, process it, and how do you actually calculate it with it. The key thing I want you to understand in this problem is there's a division here. If you anything that's divided by 0, we understand math is going to equal to 0, undefined. I'm sorry. So you have to specify in that case, and I ask you to do this as a case switch statement with this thing. So a few things I want you to key in on this thing. I'm not going to give you the whole problem with this thing, but if you look at it, declare your variables here. Okay. And then you still have, well, think about what variables you have. You have your number, your 2 numbers, num1, num2, and an operator. The data type for a num1, num2 will probably be an int, right? So int, whatever it is, double, whatever you want to use with it, but I recommend just keep it simple as an int with it. What data type would you use as an operator? I would recommend using a char, character, okay? So you can think about that as well. As that's the data type with it. Prompt the user for the 2 numbers, okay? So prompt the user for 2 numbers, separate by a space. Alright, that's one. The next thing I'd like for you to do is once you prompt the user for the 2 numbers that you have, separate by the space that so they can input that in with it, read that number in. Okay, how do you read that data in? Read in the number. Okay, so you read that in by doing what? A cin. All right, remember how you read the number in? No, this is how you read it in, right? Whatever you have, and you have your insertion, right? Whatever the identifier that you use. Do not do this. This is wrong if you did this, separated by that. Okay, that's wrong. So this is improper. You have to have an insertion on this thing. Okay, so read that in with it. All right, read that in. Other thing I want you to come down here and talk about is you need to prompt the output of this thing. So you're going to output or display. I want to say display the whatever they input, display the numbers, okay, and operator that they choose, okay, to do the math with this thing, you know, with the proper, spaces in between, okay, in between them, okay. So think about how you want to do that as well. This is very important with this thing. The determining factor, and I ask you to do a switch statement, and in a switch statement, this is the value that you put here with it. You're going to test that out right here. You can't use a relational operator or a logical operator in here. It doesn't. You cannot do that. The second thing I want to point out is that it's between curly brackets. Okay, you got to have curly brackets in here. Whatever the case may be. In this case, what case you're using it? If they choose as a plus, for instance, if they choose to use a plus, all right, put that in between the asterisk with it, and then you're going to tell them to do what? If it's a plus, you're going to tell them to do what? See out, do some sort of instruction. Okay, so math will matter. If it's a plus, num1 plus num2, that type of output with it. Remember, this is going to tag on to this part right here of your see out with this thing. So let me just bump this down here a little bit more with this thing. So this is your structure. Okay, structure goes of switch, case switch statement. Okay, so you're going to do this. This is very important that you need to have what's called a break in this thing. Okay, so you got to have a break after this thing. So after the see out, or you gotta have a break. If you don't have a break, if you remember, what happens? It's going to drop down to the next one, right? So you do this for the case plus, minus, multiplication, whatever the operator that may be. When it comes down to everything else with it is the division. Okay, so what happens in here? Let's take a look at this thing. So when you do the division of this thing, you cannot divide by 0, right? So how are you going to write that in here? What determines that? Thinking how you want to determine this thing. You can nest in another structure in here. That's what you're looking for, right? So this has to be a structure of a simple structure is the if statement with this thing, right? If else with this thing. And the determining factor is your second number that you read in, number 2, in your int data type in here on the top here. If num1, num2, your num1 is your numerator, num2 is your denominator, for example. You might want to let people know that num1 is the numerator, and prompt 2 numbers. Your first number is going to divide into the second number. And if you want to prompt them to tell them that your first number that when you divide division with this thing, you might want to tell them that you can't divide by 0. Let's say they do choose zeros with it, but you got to have a structure, an if structure, okay, right here to determine if what we're going to look at what num2 not equal to 0, right? So if you do that, okay, what happens? You have to tell me so if this is, let's look at this thing. If num2 is not equal, meaning anything other than equal, right? Then you're going to do this part that's true. See out num1 divided by num2, right? So something along that line with it. If it is, what if it is? What if num2 is false with this thing, right? So what if num2, which means that num2 is a 0 in this case, right? So you got to do an else statement in this thing. And what are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me what? Some sort of, it's undefined because you gave me it cannot be divided by 0 with this thing. Okay? Key thing I want to talk to you about in here is the case statement has what's called, you need to have a safety net in this thing, the default in this thing. In case if the user decide to not pick a plus and a minus, a multiplication or a division, you gotta tell me if they didn't pick any one of these things, you gotta give it an output with it. Okay, so this is the default for anything other than those 4 operators. Got it? Okay.